Namaste all of you. So let's start with this video. Let's see. I
There'll be
think
people watching the show wanting to be in this space of edutech, education, which, as we discussed, is very fragmented.
Right.
So, what would be your advice to them today?
I would say two things. One is build absolutely infinite appetite for bad news. And that's the first.
so. You have heard what he said that one has to build infinite appetite for bad news if you are being an entrepreneur. I think the same applies for investors. Let me elaborate on why we need to build appetite for bad news and should we first of all build at all. Let us build a case for it. So let's first know what is a headwind. Okay. So headwinds are events or set of events that impede an economic progress or inhibit progress of an economy. Like it can be war, it can be inflation, it can be a political instability, it can be anything that can go wrong which will inhibit your economic progress. It can be some bankruptcies, it can be a Lehman crisis, it can be a parliament attack, anything, any of these things, let's call them headwinds or bad news. The one thing about bad news is it gets into the headlines, it captures your imagination, it takes a lots of your time. Everybody spends discussing headwinds. So this is given for any economy, like whether you're in US or you're in Pakistan or India or Sri Lanka, you will have a COVID, you will have a crude shock or oil shock, which is currently happening because of the Russian-Ukraine war, or you will have a food shortage someday. So these things which impede or inhibit progress of an economy are given, whether you're living in US or UK or India or Sri Lanka, Pakistan or Afghanistan, wherever you're living, or Germany. So headwinds are given. So as an investor or as an entrepreneur, when you know headwinds are given, you better build appetite and see the history of what has happened across economies, even given these headwinds. What I'm trying to tell you is, okay, headwinds are there, which impede economic progress, and let's see what actually indices ended up doing. Let's take the example of USA. You had, let's say, US's chart. This chart is from March 2009 to September 21. This is talking about all the bad things that happened in the US economy and the reasons that you could find to sell at that time. Like currently, there's a war going on, there's an inflation scare across the globe, but still, even given all the headwinds and all the bad news, S&P still delivered your great return if you stayed from March 2009 to September 2021 as per the chart. But you can ask me, will it happen across economies? What if I was living in Ukraine and reading books like How to Become Rich? Or what if I'm living in Sri Lanka? Will it apply to India or even Pakistan? Will it apply all across? Because I'm giving you the best country in terms of economic progress in the world, which is US. Even with all the headwinds, US still delivered returns. And the same thing will go for, let's go and see whether it goes for India. Yeah, if you can take Nifty 50 chart and it has delivered returns over the last 30 years. But there is a developed country like Japan which has not delivered returns over the last 30 years. If you have been a Japanese citizen, invested in 1990, index didn't go anywhere in the last 32 years. You still didn't make any money from the index. So how to think about this? There's one country with all the headwinds could ended up creating wealth. Nifty, which is Indian index, also ended up creating wealth. But Japan, which is a developed economy, still didn't create wealth. And there's no need to give you a chart of what would have happened in Sri Lanka, Pakistan. I'm not even going there. So headwinds are given. I think let's establish that whether you are living in Pakistan or US or India, headwinds are given. Something or others will keep going wrong with the economy. Today, currently, we are facing the oil shock, food crisis. There's a price rise across goods and services. So headwind is given. So first thing that I want to put across to you is look at the headwinds that Indian economy has gone through in 90s, East Asian crisis, Russian default, dot-com bubble, World Trade attack, Parliament attack, Kargil war, Lehman crisis, policy paralysis of the UPA 2, PIX crisis, which is Portugal, Greece, Italy, and Spain crisis, taper tantrum in 2013, demonetization, ILFS, banking cleanup, COVID, Russia-Ukraine war, and because of which you have inflation scare now. So I think, are fairly established that wherever you live, headwinds are given, and headwinds occupy headlines. You will read, people will always be because bad news sells. It will be discussed everywhere, and there will be if there's one government, other government will try to show you things that are bad with what is going on in the economy and all. So headwinds are given. So this is the first part of what I want to tell you, that if you are an entrepreneur or an investor, you need to make sure that you have to develop appetite for bad news. But that doesn't mean it will give you returns. You have seen this, that US delivered returns, but it didn't happen in Japan. It happened in India, and I need not tell you about Sri Lanka and Pakistan. So what will deliver returns? What deliver returns are tailwinds. What do I mean by tailwinds? Let us go to the definition here. Tailwinds are conditions that will propel growth. Okay, so let us discuss tailwinds. What is tailwind? How does it help an economy grow? How should we as investors think about tailwinds and headwinds? And before going to the next video, let me just show the last part of it.
First rule of entrepreneurship,
Yes.
not just education, which means it's not a path paved with gold until you survive long enough. Second is, while you keep that, you shouldn't lose your optimism, your imagination. You should have a lot of ability to question the status quo, because every entrepreneur has actually dismissed the status quo, disagreed with it, and said that there is a new order that I can imagine. And the way it is different from a job is that you could blame somebody and get away.
Right.
Here, the more you take on your chest, the more you own up failures, the more you grow, because you now know you have to make a shift, the more you build credibility with your team members.
So let me come back. So what he is telling you is, boss, develop appetite for bad news because it is given, but at the same time be optimistic. But you can only be optimistic, or you have to be optimistic only if you are very sure that there are enough tailwinds for this economy to become bigger. Like in India, will this 3 trillion become 6 trillion, 10 trillion? Are we on that path? Are we screwing up our economy? And how to think about it, we'll see in the next video. But I'm just trying to establish that headwinds will be given. Don't expect an economy wherever you go, headwinds are given. It is our job as a country that we make sure that we don't remain poor. It's like inflation is given. Prices are going to rise in the long run, let's say for some commodities. It is your job not to remain poor. So let us discuss tailwinds. So let me stop here on this.